going on, everybody? Thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Star Wars Rebels. So Star Wars Rebels is the series that is essentially a sequel series to the Clone Wars, as well as just being its own thing. It takes place about 5 to 6 years prior to the events of A New Hope Episode 4, the original Star Wars film, to a lot of people just Star Wars. And Star Wars Rebels for me is easily my favorite Star Wars TV show. Now, we just got The Mandalorian, we've only gotten one season, and I loved it, and I can already tell it's going to become a favorite, so who knows where that ranking will land after I film this, or, you know, just in general as the Star Wars content continues to come out. But as far as Star Wars Rebels today, this show has just got such a special place in my heart. Clone Wars is easily one of my favorite things in Star Wars. I love it so much. It's become one of the biggest things in the Star Wars fandom. And I think that what Dave Filoni learned from doing the Clone Wars and was able to implement into Rebels really just takes us to another level. Another thing I really love about Rebels is it's only 4 seasons. So this is a very tight show for the most part. You know, there's a lot of episodes, there are plenty of filler, just fun adventure episodes. But for the most part, this is a very tight story, especially as you get further into the series. The 3rd and 4th season are just absolutely incredible. I just love what they did from a writing perspective, the character growth, and the time you have with these characters within 4 seasons. You just find yourself incredibly in love with Ezra, Kanan, Hera, and the rest of the crew of the Ghost, and I just never get tired of it. Now, as I'm sure you could tell by the title of the show, Star Wars Rebels, the show follows a group of rebels and their adventures on kind of building the rebellion to what we know it to be before the events of Episode 4. I really enjoyed being able to see the rebellion slowly build and to see these characters that were pivotal in the growth and the initial growth in general of this rebellion that we know would go on to become this huge thing. And it's just crazy to see the small stepping stones, see characters from the films in younger iterations, see characters from the Clone Wars in older iterations, and it's so great to see the interconnectivity of the movies and Clone Wars. This, for me, is the perfect hybrid of what Clone Wars was trying to set up with its own series, as well as what the movies do on their own. You really get to get all this connective tissue from the movies and from the Clone Wars and really just make the perfect sequel series to Clone Wars, as well as a great prequel for the events of the original trilogy. Star Wars Rebels will always have a special place in my heart, and I literally never get tired of this show. I've seen the show in its entirety now about 3 times, with certain episodes being viewed way more times than that. I think it does a great job of being its own story, setting up its own characters, giving you a lot of heart, a lot of charm that you want from Star Wars, and telling you a lot more of a streamlined, straight narrative. When you watch the Clone Wars, the idea of the Clone Wars is one episode can be over here and with this planet with these characters, and another episode could be with these characters on another planet, and a whole different thing going on. Some episodes are a lot more action-based, and some episodes are a lot more political. And at times you'll have like a 3-episode arc, but for the most part, every episode is kind of its own thing with connective tissue that by the end, you kind of feel like you have this bigger story and you have a bigger understanding of the Clone Wars. Whereas Rebels is a lot more of your typical TV show. Every episode picks up where the last one left off, and I think that allows you to have this adventure that's very streamlined with these characters, and it's something I prefer when it comes to Star Wars television, and it's something I prefer when it comes to television as a whole. One of my favorite TV shows of all time is One Piece. It's an anime. It's over 900 episodes now, or around 900 episodes if I'm not mistaken. I think it's over 900 episodes now, and it's great because for the most part, from that very first episode all the way to where you are, outside of a big time skip that comes later on in the show and little time skips here and there, almost every episode picks up right after the last one, and you're really able to feel like you're on this adventure with these characters. So Star Wars Rebels does that, very different from what the Clone Wars did, and I really enjoy being able to go on this adventure with these characters. These characters have become some of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars, and one of the things that I think Disney and Star Wars should be the most proud of as far as what they've made since Disney acquired Lucasfilm. There's so much heart and charm and beauty in this story that has so much respect for the films, for the canon, for the books, for the Clone Wars, and there's just so much love for the Force and Star Wars put into the show. The show also does an incredible job of expanding the lore of Star Wars, expanding the knowledge of the Force, and expanding what you know Star Wars to be. There are some things in here that I feel may challenge audiences as far as what they feel is Star Wars and is not Star Wars, but for the most part, I think if anybody has watched Rebels, I've very rarely heard negative things. The only times I really hear anything negative about Rebels is that when people started it, they didn't know if they would like it. They only watched maybe the first episode or the first couple episodes, and they didn't really allow themselves to get further into it, and they just weren't into it. And I think with Rebels, it's a show that takes a little bit of time for you to get this groove of who these characters are and what's going on. But once it does, I think it does an amazing job of keeping you hooked in for the future. And I think this is a show that I highly recommend. If you have not watched Star Wars Rebels, definitely go watch the Clone Wars first. I think that you will have more of an impact with the show if you watch the Clone Wars, because like I said, this is more of a sequel series to the Clone Wars. It's its own thing. It has its own characters, its own arcs, and there are characters in here you may recognize, like, hey, I have seen that person from images from the Clone Wars, and it won't necessarily ruin your experience to have not seen Clone Wars, but I think that with some of the characters that are in this show, and for the length of time that they're in this show, I think it is in a lot of ways pivotal that you watch the Clone Wars first and then watch this, because this is some of the best Star Wars ever put to screen. You get expansion of the lore, you get expansion of characters like Darth Maul that was also in Clone Wars, and to be able to see him expanded in this, characters like Ahsoka, Captain Rex, there's just so many great character moments and things that expand upon these characters that you know and love in some of the coolest animation and coolest just overall Star Wars that we've ever gotten put to screen. All in all, this is an incredible show that I highly recommend. I think if you are a fan of Star Wars to any degree, you will have a good time with Rebels. Even if you don't love it, there's no way that you don't find yourself attached to these characters. And I honestly haven't really spoken to anybody who is a Star Wars fan who has watched this show and disliked it in any way. There are little things you can nitpick. There are some things that are a little bit more, I guess, silly and kid-friendly. So if you don't like that in Star Wars at all, which I feel is kind of weird because Star Wars has always had that, but if you don't like that, there are these little elements here and there that I guess you can find it a little kid-friendly at times. But for the most part, this is a really good story. This is really great character moments. There's really great character expansion and a really great expansion of the lore and Star Wars as a whole. And what I love about it is they knew to end it at 4 seasons, not because they were running out of ideas, but simply because that's where the show and the story needed to end. They have a nice, tight, just nice little bow on top of this show. It doesn't feel like it's overstayed its welcome, and it almost makes you wish that there was more a lot sooner. The way it ends definitely makes you crave more, and I think that's the best thing that you can have out of a show, is to have a great ending that also makes you want more out of it. So yeah, guys, Star Wars Rebels, definitely go check it out. I highly recommend it. It's a show that's put so many smiles on my face as well as so many emotions through my body. I've always had a great time watching it. Some of the coolest action and some of the coolest moments, so many emotional moments, so many just freaking hilarious moments as well, and just some great Star Wars adventures that I highly recommend. So Star Wars Rebels, go check it out. If you have Disney Plus, it is on there in its entirety. I do recommend watching the Clone Wars first. I know you may think, well, I have to watch a whole other show to watch this one, but the Clone Wars is great too. So if you're interested in this show, I think that the Clone Wars would be right up your alley as well, and then Rebels is just better. And I think that there's people who like the Clone Wars more, and I think that's totally perfect. I think that both shows do such a great job of being their own things while also connecting to each other in so many beautiful ways, specifically Rebels because it came after Clone Wars, and I think that this is really the show that really, I already knew that Dave Filoni was an incredible creator, but going into this show, it's really the show that solidified for me that Dave Filoni is just a god within Star Wars in this day and age, and I just love what he's doing with the lore and with Star Wars on an overall, and I cannot wait to see what he does going forward. So definitely go check out Star Wars Rebels, guys. Leave your comments down below. Have you seen this show? Have you not seen the show? How do you like this show? Leave me all your comments. I'm definitely curious. Definitely hit that like button. It helps the channel out, guys. Even if you're watching this, maybe you watch these videos and you just don't really think to hit the like button. Hit that like button. It really helps the channel out, and it gets more eyes on the channel. Really do appreciate that. Hit that subscribe button if you guys are interested in more content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.